Hello there. In this video, I'm going to talk about Hollinger Bus Lines. This was a private bus operator that once operated in East York to provide public transit to that part of the city. So, let's get into the video. The origins of Hollinger Bus Lines can be found in the early 1920s, 1921 specifically. That year, the company would be founded by John Hollinger with the purpose of providing bus service to the town of East York. Prior to 1954, public transit outside of the city of Toronto was the responsibility of the individual municipalities, as the TTC's operational mandate was exclusively within the city of Toronto. While the TTC did operate some routes beyond the city's boundaries, this was done under contract. By the mid-1920s, there had been a proposal to construct streetcar lines into what is today East York as part of the Township of York Railways. However, this plan would fall through after the Township of York broke apart into the three Yorks we know today: North York, East York, and York. J. Hollinger & Co. Ltd. would be founded in 1921 and by June of that year had begun operations on its first bus route, that being the Woodbine bus. This would be a short bus route operating along Woodbine Avenue from Danforth Avenue to O'Connor Drive. The intersection of Woodbine and O'Connor would be where the company's garage and headquarters was located. The Woodbine bus would be the company's lone route for the next 10 years. In the meantime, on March 1, 1927, a man by the name of Alex Hamilton would establish a bus route along Dawes Road, aptly named the Dawes Road Bus. This route would operate from Danforth Avenue, north along Dawes Road and Victoria Park Avenue to Peard Road. In 1928, the Woodbine bus would receive a rush-hour branch service which operated from Woodbine Avenue east along Lumsden Avenue to Main Street. 2 years later, on December 27, 1930, Hamilton would sell his Dawes Road bus to a Mr. A. Sefton, who would operate it under the name Del Rey Coach Lines. A month later, on January 10, 1931, the Dawes Road route would be changed, with it now operating from Latrell Loop west on Danforth and north on Dawes Road in Victoria Park to a turnback loop at Amsterdam Avenue. 12 months later, on December 16th, after 10 years, Hollinger Bus Lines would begin service on two new bus routes. One of these would be the Coxwell Main bus. This route would operate from Danforth Avenue, north on Coxwell, east on Salmon Avenue, north on Woodbine, and east on Lumsden Avenue to Main Street. The second route established on this day would be the Broadview bus. This route would start at Danforth Avenue and run north on Broadview, east on Mortimer Avenue, and north on Donlands to O'Connor Drive. Things for Hollinger Bus Lines would quiet down until 1933. February 3, 1933 would see another expansion of the bus network as two new routes would be introduced on this day. The first would be the Woodbine Dawes bus. This route would start at Danforth Avenue and run north on Woodbine, east on Lumsden Avenue, and south on Main Street to Danforth. The second route established on this day would be the Donlands bus. This route would operate from Danforth Avenue and run north on Donlands Avenue, east on Mortimer, south on Linsmore Crescent, east on Salmon Avenue, and south on Coxwell Road to Danforth. This route would receive a slight adjustment a few weeks later, as on February 25th, the route would now operate south on Monarch Park Avenue instead of Linsmore Crescent. 3 years later, in July of 1936, changes would be made to the network. Firstly, on July 6th, Mr. Sefton would close up Del Rey coaches and sell the Dawes Road bus to Hollinger. Its route would be unchanged. Secondly, that same day the Wexford bus would enter service. This was a rush hour service that ran from Luttrell Loop, west on Danforth Avenue, north along Dawes Road and Victoria Park Avenue, and then east on Lawrence Avenue to Birchmount Road. A couple of days later, the Woodbine Dawes bus would be changed, with it now operating from Danforth Avenue, north on Woodbine, east on Lumsden, south on Barrington Avenue, east on Seacourt Avenue, and then south on Dawes Road to Danforth. A year later, on October 24, 1937, Sunday service for the Woodbine Dawes and Dawes Road buses would be merged. The route would follow the Woodbine Dawes route to Main Street, where it would then head south to Danforth Avenue, east to Dawes Road, and then north on Dawes Road in Victoria Park to Amsterdam Loop. A year later, on December 5, 1938, Hollinger Bus Lines would begin service on a high school bus service to serve East York Collegiate. This route would operate from Woodbine Avenue, west on O'Connor Drive, south on Broadview, east on Mortimer Avenue, south on Pape, east on Salmon Avenue, north on Donlands, and east on Cosburn to Coxwell Avenue. Naturally, this route would only operate during school hours. The outbreak of World War II would see supplies such as gas and rubber rationed for the war effort. This would naturally take a toll on the region's bus operators, but it didn't deter them from providing public transit to areas not served by the streetcars. In the case of Hollinger Bus Lines, they would partner with Danforth Bus Lines to provide a service to the General Engineering Company plant in Scarborough. This route would commence operations in March of 1941 as a rush hour service and operated from Danforth Avenue, north on Dawes Road in Victoria Park to Eglinton Avenue. It would then run east to Birchmount Road. On May 22nd, the Woodbine bus would be extended north across the new Woodbine Bridge, now O'Connor Drive, to Glenwood Crescent. By August of 1941, a new service from Yonge and Eglinton had been established to the Gecko plant in Scarborough. While I can't find the exact route, it is likely that this bus would have run from Yonge Street, east on Eglinton to Laird Drive. It would then run south to O'Connor Drive and east along O'Connor and Eglinton to Birchmount Road. The reason why it would have to take this route is because until 1958, there was no Eglinton Avenue between Brentcliffe Road and Victoria Park. On January 26, 1942, a new bus route would enter service, that being the Broadview Coxwell bus. This route would operate from Danforth Avenue, north on Coxwell, west on Mortimer Avenue to an on-street loop via Jackman Avenue, Nealon Avenue, and Broadview Avenue. On May 1, 1942, a third Gecko service would begin, with this one operating from Yonge and St. Clair, and then probably south on Yonge to Danforth, and then either east along Danforth to Dawes or east along O'Connor. It is possible that this route also ran north to Eglinton and then followed the Eglinton Gecko route. Ultimately, I can't say for sure as I couldn't find an exact route for this service. A year later, on December 20th, 1943, the O'Connor bus would enter service. This route would operate from Danforth Avenue, north on Coxwell, and east on O'Connor Drive to Woodbine Avenue. Hollinger Bus Lines would then remain as it is for the remainder of the war. At the end of the war, the Gecko services to Yonge Street would be discontinued. As well, I believe the partnership with Danforth Bus Lines would also end here. In September of 1945, the Woodbine bus would be extended north on O'Connor Drive to Tiago Avenue. On October 29, 1945, Hollinger Bus Lines would begin service on its one and only intercity bus route, that being the Mount Albert bus. This route would run from the Toronto Grey Coach Terminal at Bay and Edward Streets. The route would then run north on Bay Street, east on Wellesley, north on Parliament Street, east on Bloor, north and east on Broadview and O'Connor Drive, north on Victoria Park, west on Shepherd Avenue, known as Lansing Road at the time, north on Don Mills Road, west on Vivian Road, and north on Highway 48 to Mount Albert. Beyond just Toronto and Mount Albert, this route would also serve the small communities of Quaker, Pleasantville, Pine Orchard, Cedar Valley, Vivian, and West Franklin. Back in Toronto, at some point before 1947, the southern terminus of the Woodbine and Woodbine-Dawes buses would be changed to a new off-street loop at the intersection of Woodbine and Strathmore Boulevard. This loop would be equipped with a waiting area and a lunch counter. As well, a loop was also constructed on Broadview Avenue just north of Danforth before 1947. On May 5, 1947, service on the Broadview-Coxwell route would be changed, as it would now operate from Danforth Avenue, north on Broadview, east on Mortimer Avenue, and south on Coxwell Road to Danforth. On August 2, 1949, the Woodbine-St. Clair bus would enter service. This route would run from Woodbine Loop, north along Woodbine Avenue and east on O'Connor Drive and St. Clair Avenue to Victoria Park Avenue. That same day, the O'Connor bus would be extended north along O'Connor Drive to an off-street loop north of Holland Avenue. Finally, the service on the Woodbine bus would be ended on this day, ending 28 years of service. The early 1950s would see further expansions to Hollinger Bus Lines network. First, at some point before 1950, a new off-street bus loop and terminal was constructed at Coxwell and Strathmore Boulevard. This loop would include an indoor waiting area and restaurant. Secondly, on January 3, 1950, the Parkview Hill bus would enter service. This route would operate from Coxwell Loop, north on Coxwell, east on O'Connor Drive, and west on St. Clair Avenue to Woodbine Heights Boulevard. A year later, in 1951, this route would begin to perform an on-street loop via Parkview Crescent, Ellswick Road, Hackberry Street, and Woodbine Heights Boulevard. 1951 would also see control of the company pass from John Hollinger to his son, John B. Hollinger. 1952 would see the final additions and changes to the Hollinger bus network. Firstly, in early 1952, the Industrial Loop bus would enter service. This route would operate during rush hour and operated from Coxwell Loop, north on Coxwell, and east on O'Connor Drive to an on-street loop via Curity Avenue, Hollinger Road, and Bermondsey Road. This loop would be performed in reverse during the PM rush. Secondly, the IBM bus would enter service. This route, as its name implies, served the large IBM factory at Don Mills and Eglinton. Specifically, it was a rush hour route that operated from Coxwell Loop, north on Coxwell, west on O'Connor Drive, and north on Don Mills Road to the IBM plant at Eglinton Avenue. 1952 would also see a change to the Donlands bus, as it would now operate from Danforth Avenue, north on Donlands, east on Mortimer, and south on Coxwell to Coxwell Loop. Finally, the Gecko bus would be renamed to Eglinton. In its annual report from December 31, 1953, Hollinger Bus Lines had revenues of $698,389.31 with an operating expense of $570,169.46 for a profit of $128,219.85. In a report from June 30, 1953, Hollinger Bus Lines employed 96 personnel, made up of 65 drivers, 18 garage staff, 4 office staff, 3 superintendents, 3 inspectors, 1 dispatcher, 1 garage foreman, and 1 assistant foreman. The company owned 61 buses made up of 21 Fitzjohn Cityliners, 13 Fitzjohn FTGs, 10 Ford 72Ts, 7 Ford 19Bs, 5 Ford 29Bs, 3 Ford 99Ts, 1 Fitzjohn Duraliner, and 1 Fitzjohn Falcon. As well, the company owned 4 service vehicles, those being a 1936 GMC tow truck with plow, a 1947 Mercury panel truck, a 1949 Pontiac coach, and a 1951 Buick Roadmaster. Service for Hollinger Bus Lines would come to an end in 1954 when its routes were taken over by the Toronto Transit Commission, thus ending 33 years of service. In 1954, the TTC was uploaded to the new Metropolitan Toronto government, and with that its operational mandate now encompassed the entire region and not just the city of Toronto proper. Because of this, the private bus operators around Toronto, including Hollinger, were now folded into the TTC, which was now to become the only transit operator in Toronto. Upon the takeover, the TTC would retain 56 buses from Hollinger, with 24 of them being deemed surplus. Ultimately, in the end, 12 buses would be scrapped, with the remaining ones either used as surplus for parts or put back into revenue service. The TTC would conduct 2 appraisals of Hollinger's assets of $803,230 and $804,420 respectively. Including goodwill, these assets were estimated to be valued at $1,095,000 and $1,194,000 respectively. All things considered, East York had a pretty comprehensive bus network for a town of its size. So now the question is, what impact did Hollinger Bus Lines have on Toronto? Well, the routes played a role in getting the residents of East York into and out of the city, and today many of Hollinger's routes still live on. The 91 Woodbine and 93 Parkview Hills would eventually replace service on Woodbine Avenue and the Parkview Hill neighborhood. The 70 O'Connor would replace service on Coxwell Avenue, while the 8 Broadview would fill in service along Broadview Avenue and O'Connor Drive. The 62 Mortimer would serve Mortimer Avenue, and the 56 Leaside would serve Donlands Avenue. The 23 Dawes would replace service on Dawes Road, while the 24 Victoria Park would fill in on Victoria Park Avenue. Service once provided by the IBM bus would be replaced by the 25 Don Mills. Finally, service along Eglinton and Lawrence Avenues would be replaced by the 34 and 54 respectively. With the bus routes out of the way, do any Hollinger buildings still exist? The answer to that is yes, one building still remains. The terminal building at the old Coxwell Loop is now an A&W. As for the rest of its former properties, firstly, the site of Hollinger's garage and headquarters is now an apartment building. The site of the old Amsterdam Loop on Victoria Park is now houses. The site of the old Holland Loop on O'Connor is now a strip mall. And the site of the old Victoria Park Loop on St. Clair East has been filled in. The interesting remnants, however, are the company's 3 terminals, as each of them is now the site of a subway station and its bus terminal. The old Coxwell Loop is now Coxwell Station. The old Woodbine Loop is now Woodbine Station. And the old Broadview Loop is now Broadview Station. Hollinger Bus Lines was an important part of Toronto's transit history, providing public transit to the town of East York. By the end of its run, the company had built a comprehensive grid of bus routes around the town, totaling 14 routes, 8 locals, 5 rush hours, and 1 inner city. Many of its routes still live on today in other forms, and its terminals funneled riders onto Danforth Avenue and the Bloor streetcar, thus helping set the stage for the Bloor-Danforth subway. And with that, I will end this video here. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it and want to see more like it, please hit that subscribe button because there are more videos like it on the channel, and there are more videos like it on the way. If there's anything you want to say about Hollinger Bus Lines, don't be afraid to do so in the comment section down below. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.